Hello, Red Wave. Welcome to Blair Bulldogs podcast. Today, we get to know the Michigan Wolverine football team with our special guest, Anthony Broome. Anthony Broome covers the Michigan Wolverines at On3. You could check him out at thewolverine.com. Anthony, thanks for joining us. Did I get all that right?
You did. Bat 1,000. Okay. I love it.
So, perfect. That doesn't last long, though. But I will say, if you hit 50-plus home runs, I'll also be happy. So I'll take that. Go Dogs, Aaron Judge on a record pace right now. So joining me as always, my good friend Caleb Pletz. Caleb, it is officially football season. We have our first guest. Real quick, thoughts on Michigan, and then I'll get it started hitting Anthony with some questions.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this all day because the first get to know of the season, that means, football's finally here. I mean, it's been a long off season. I'm sure for, Anthony and, all the Michigan faithful. It's been a glorious off season of celebrating, but also tumultuous of a lot of change. So very interested to see kind of the Michigan perspective on this. But yeah, just excited for football to be back. So let's get going.
All right, let's do it. Anthony, how was the offseason, and what are your expectations for – actually, I'm going to hold off on that. How was the offseason? Let's go basic. How was the offseason?
It's so funny. First off, thank you for having me. It's the first kind of guest spot for an opponent of the year, so excited to be here. I'm looking forward to getting to know your guys' team a little bit more throughout the week. One of the things I always get when people ask, what does your job entail? Like, what do you do when the season's over? What do you do in the spring? What do you do in the summer? And I'm here to tell the Fresno State masses, when you cover Michigan, it does not ever stop. There is no downtime. There's a couple weeks stretch, maybe in late June to early to mid-July before we go to Big Ten Media Days, where there's not a whole lot going on. But other than that, like, this is not only was I a football writer last year, I also brushed up on my knowledge of the NCAA bylaws and history and all of those types of things. The offseason was at the same it flew by. Like, it seems like just yesterday that I hopped on a plane to Houston after days after the Rose Bowl. I was gone like 14 of 15 days there during the college football playoff, home for about 18 hours between the Rose Bowl and Houston, packed my bag, and obviously saw that season conclude the way it did. And now we're here. But in the span of 17 days, I mean, there was just this insane seismic change within the program. No Jim Harbaugh, no JJ McCarthy. You have all these guys going to the NFL. Jim Harbaugh, I don't want to say he didn't do Sharon Moore any favors, but took a lot of very valuable people with him to the Chargers. So a lot of change there. A couple of Sharon Morris hires had, some legal issues with, driving while intoxicated, and those were things. But, once the frenetic nature of getting this staff together, getting to spring ball, and just coaching football, everything between the winter and that was kind of crazy. But from then on, it's felt like a lot of the same. Something I keep coming back to is during Michigan's spring game, Fox did the national broadcast, and Joel Klatt said something along the lines of everything is different, but everything is also the same. There's a lot of new faces on the coaching staff, a lot of familiar faces to Michigan fans on the roster, just guys that haven't played, because you've had these stalwarts there that ran it back last year to try to win a national title. You've had guys that were 2-year starters, 3-year starters that have finally moved on. So, once we actually got to the football part of the offseason, and really in every subsequent Sherrod Moore appearance since then, it's kind of given you a little more confidence that this program is being led by the right person, that it's the logical successor to Jim Harbaugh. And listen, what happens on the field, it's so hard to predict for reasons that I'm sure we'll talk about soon. But, there's almost kind of like, I don't want to say it's house money, but there's like a stability and a calmness that washes over the fan base when you have what I would consider the best season in program history, certainly in modern times. So I think that things are calm. There's a calm confidence about the team, the players, the fan base, and there's a lot of good, really good pieces still there. So there's a lot of excitement there. And this is a team that does not expect this to be a rebuilding year. They think that they have the goods to stay in this conversation. So it's going to be fun to see if they're right or not.
Yeah, definitely. And, talking about expectations, it probably is a big relief for a lot of people that, okay, we won. Like we won, and, we beat the team. Michigan calls Ohio State the team up north, or is that the other way around? Sorry, we're not really big Ten guys.
No, Michigan is okay. Michigan has the respect to just refer to them as what they are. Whereas Ohio State has all these corny kind of sayings, and they cross out the M's during the rivalry week, and they always leave one still, which is, I don't know if that's part of the bit, but it's always hilarious. But
perfect.
Yeah.
So anyways, they have the relief of, yes, we won, like we're the number one team. And yeah, I do feel like your point about house money, that's got to be like pretty accurate, I think, because, hey, so much departed from last year's team, but also, the stability of Jerome Moore. And I mean, you know what you're going to get with him. I mean, he coached 4 or 5 games last year at the helm. So got to be some stability there, and feeling like there is a chance that they can run it back. So is that like a realistic expectation that like we can repeat, or is that like people aren't really thinking that highly of this coming team?
I think in the building, they'll tell you that's what the standard is. Like they've set that bar, before even last season. You had made 2 trips to the college football playoff. So that is the expectation there. I think the fan base sort of has this self-awareness that, at the most consequential position in the sport at quarterback, like J.J. McCarthy is arguably the best they've ever had. And the battle that's currently taking place, I don't know if the guy who wins that job will be the starter at the end of this year, let alone to start next year. I think that the expectation within the fan base is, you know what? We think that this team can win 9, 10 games, get into this newly expanded 12-team playoff, but and maybe give Oregon and Ohio State, who have sort of been the consensus top 2 teams in, flip-flopped or whatever, but that's kind of feels like a lot of national people, and even maybe myself included, have sort of tiered out the Big Ten as those 2, and then maybe it's that cluster of like Michigan, Penn State, USC, and then sort of everyone else. I think that's where most Michigan fans are at. If things break right and Alex Orji, who we think is going to be their starting quarterback, becomes, what Jalen Milroe was at Alabama last year, then maybe that pushes the ceiling up. But I think uncertainty around that is, and also just knowing that, not saying they're going to regress to 7-5 or 6-6, but to a certain extent, water's going to find its level. They went 40-3 the last, 3 years combined. And there are at least probably 4 or 5 games on this schedule that they very easily could lose. So I think it's, like I said, it's like a quiet calmness, but there is a confidence that there's not going to be a substantial drop off, at least in year 1.
You brought up the quarterback situation. I want to get to know the quarterbacks a little more, because all I know is the last name of the so-called starting quarterback right now. And it's unfortunate last name. I think we should change it. But
no, it's got to stay.
Oh, it's got to stay. There is a English football player. His last name is Origi. I think we should go with that. I think that's a little better. But it does make me laugh. And again, I will smile. I do smile when I hear it. It's funny. But Origi is the quarterback so far, listed as a starting quarterback. What are your thoughts on him as a quarterback? What can Fresno State fans expect from him? And then that may lead into a conversation about offensive line. But start with the quarterback position. What can we expect? What can we expect from Origi? And we'll go from there.
Yeah, it's tough to say because we don't know what to expect from him. He's thrown 1 career pass in his career. His name was sort of made infamous by Robert Griffin III, saying that there was, when he scored his first career touchdown, that it was, and this is his words, that there was an orgy in the end zone. That's sort of the launching off point of all of this. It's a two-man. They have waged a battle all off season through spring ball, through fall camp. It's a two-man battle right now. And I think that, if we kind of just hone in on what this means for Saturday, I think you're going to see two guys play quarterback a decent amount, unless there is some separation this week. It'll be Alex Orji and Davis Warren, a guy who was a former walk-on, worked himself into a scholarship guy. Really interesting story with him. It's interesting and sad. Like his junior year of high school, he did not play because he was dealing with a cancer diagnosis. Gets himself right, gets kind of back to where he wants to be. COVID-19 pandemic happens. Senior season of football doesn't occur. So guy who didn't play, the two most important years of high school football that, a recruit can play. And he's got some skills, man. I mean, he's not JJ McCarthy, but I think he does a lot of the same things just from, the ability to throw the football. I think he's more mobile than people have gotten him credit for. And we've heard throughout camp, he's, if you just take one trait and do the superlatives thing, like, yes, Alex Orji's probably like, he's a dual threat. He's a guy that is built like a linebacker. He's going to run through you like a freight train. And he's got some talent throwing the ball that needs to be put together. Davis Warren, a lot of people have categorized him as, the best pure thrower of any of Michigan's quarterbacks. And there were 5 of them in spring ball. Kind of gets whittled down to the 3 guys, with the 2 guys we just mentioned and Jack Tuttle. Tuttle has had some health stuff all off season and does not seem like he's in the mix for this job anymore. So those are the 2 guys you're going to see. It's tough for me to say what each of them bring because I don't know. I mean, in theory, if Alex Orji's out there, you're going to see a lot more designed QB runs. You're going to see, the RPO stuff. You're going to see probably some triple option type of stuff. But I think the meat and potatoes of what Michigan wants to do will remain the same no matter who's out there. Davis Warren, maybe just more of a traditional drop back guy with some mobility to his game. But I think you will see the 2 guys, in my opinion. There's a possibility that they name their guy later this week. And once they do that, it kind of gets put out there and maybe it is just the one guy. But, if you're asking me to maybe plant a flag, I do think that it will be Orji that does start Saturday's game. It's just a matter of if it's in a platoon, if it's in a competition, or if he's the guy.
Got it. And so looking at who's going to be protecting Orji and, setting up the run game, it looks like the offensive line, ton of turnover and a lot of, newer faces, I guess, maybe to playing time, but maybe guys that have been in the program. So what is the way I'm looking at it, offensive line may be the biggest question mark for Michigan this year, or am I off base there?
Surprisingly, I mean, without this lingering quarterback question, I think there's a case to be made for that. You've got a lot of guys, again, sort of talked about this a little bit earlier, where you've got guys that have been in college for a long time and probably, a couple of them probably would have started last year if, you're not able to land one guy out of the transfer portal, if one more guy goes to the NFL. I think they're pretty strong up the middle. I think you've got a guard in Josh Preeb, who came over from Northwestern, was kind of like an honorable mention, all Big Ten type of guy, but to do that at Northwestern is impressive. I think he's had a great offseason. Giovanni El-Hadi was the guy who stepped in and started games 2 years ago when Trevor Keegan went down at guard. He's probably slides into that right guard role. And then one of the concerns I have is there was a 2-man battle at center that is now apparently turned into a 3-man battle at center, which center quarterback being your top maybe 2 questions on offense right now is not the most stable thing in the world. But you got a couple guys battling it out there, but and also there's a competition at right tackle as well, but they feel like they have pretty good depth, and they feel like that really it's just a matter of getting these guys reps, getting these guys going, getting these guys chemistry. So, I know we'll probably talk about the matchup here in a little bit, but if you're an upstart sort of program that is a 3-score underdog, but looking to maybe put a scare in someone, I think when you look over on the other sideline and they have offensive line questions, they have quarterback questions, there's a path to that being a competitive game. Now, it's possible that guys come out and, Michigan's offensive line rolls and they look like they have the last few years, and quarterback takes care of the football and that swings the other direction. But that is a concern right now, I think, to a lot of Michigan fans. I think that they have good pieces there. I think they do. Do they have a good offensive line unit that, a stable offensive line? We don't know that. But from the sounds of things, that offensive line in fall camp has given the defensive line that features, I think, 4 NFL guys. They've given them some fits. There's been some good back and forth. I think it's been productive. I don't know that internally they're concerned, but, for us, I mean, in a lot of ways, we know slightly more, maybe just a little bit more than the rest of the country does.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of questions are going to be answered this week, and it sounds like. Any skill players other than Donovan Edwards that we should know about?
Colston Loveland is probably the best tight end in college football. That's a guy you're going to want to keep an eye on. Can play in line. They can flex him onto the slot. I think there's a chance he plays a little outside receiver this year. Going to be that movable piece for them. They're only returning starter from last year's team on the offensive side of the ball. So I think your coaching staff probably has him underlined 3 times and circled in the scouting report. Edwards is a guy who's had a lot of, has a lot of ability, has played in a lot of big games. But when you have Blake Corum playing in front of you, your volume is going to be limited, because that's a guy that they'd turn around and hand the ball off to 30 times a game and give it to him on the goal line and in short yardage situations. And it was kind of automatic. And Edwards isn't quite that guy. I think that they have a tandem in Edwards and Colel Mullings, who's a 5th-year guy that Colel probably takes a lot more of that short yardage type of stuff off of Edwards' plate. I think that it is a true 1A and 1B backfield. So they've got some depth there. Wide receiver, don't really have that tall sort of chuck it down the field and go get it type of guy, but they have a stable of wide receivers in Tyler Morris and Samaj Morgan, who had some really good moments last year, and they're relatively young as well. Samaj Morgan's a sophomore, Tyler Morris is a junior, but it seems like they're going to be a little more, maybe aggressive isn't the word, because I think when Michigan fans specifically hear aggressive, they're like, finally, we're going to stop running the ball 50 times a game and we're going to throw the ball down the field and all that. I think you're going to see a lot of misdirection. I think you'll see a lot of jet sweeps and screens and those types of things, making an effort to get those guys the ball in space. So I think, anytime you look down and you see, Roman Wilson's in the NFL, Cornelius Johnson's in the NFL, Blake Corum's in the NFL, you're like, sheesh, that room kind of cleared out of playmakers, didn't it? But I think that's the one thing where it registers as a question, maybe with the national crowd and even some in the Michigan fan base, but I think their skill players have a chance to be really, really good.
Right. And so we've kind of highlighted like a lot of question marks on offense. Defense is, as a Fresno State fan, I am very concerned with how our guys are going to be able to hold up, because there is just a lot of really talented players there. You briefly mentioned defensive line. I mean, in the secondary, I mean, they're really good too. So, I mean, any, people or players in specifics that you think we need to be aware of, and hey, look out for this guy, he's probably going to make a difference on Saturday?
I mean, I'm not into like hyperbole or anything like that, but I think that every guy that starts for Michigan on Saturday night, if he's not an NFL guy after this season, he will be at some point. I think that defensive line, I mean, you've got 2 defensive tackles. Mason Graham, you look at any early draft board for 2025, he's like a top, I think PFF has him as their like number 3 prospect. Kenneth Grant's a guy who, has gotten some love as a potential first rounder. I think Josiah Stewart, Derek Moore on the edges are guys that will play in the NFL. Same deal with both the starting linebackers. Same deal with, Will Johnson, again, maybe the best player of any of those guys at cornerback. He's a guy that is considered maybe maybe a contender for the top overall pick. I mean, I know there's a lot of work to be done before that, but certainly a guy who's going to be in the mix to be drafted in the top 5, top 10. A few maybe depth and greenery concerns at cornerback. They're super young there outside of Will Johnson. Jair Hill's a sophomore who really is going to be getting his first, reps of meaningful playing time. I think he starts the opener. There's safeties. You lose Rod Moore, who was an NFL guy in his own right, played one of the best defensive games I've ever seen in the Rose Bowl last year. He tears his ACL or has some kind of knee injury in spring ball. He's out for the year, but they hit the transfer portal hard. They brought in a couple guys there. They think they have a nice little 4-man group at safety, maybe even 5 guys there. They're going to rotate a lot. And I think that with the talent they have, with the depth that it seems like they've cultivated, and then you've got Wink Martindale, who just spent the last 2 decades working in the NFL. It's kind of the godfather of the defensive system that Michigan's been running the last few years. It really just kind of feels like a seamless fit. And I'd be stunned if this wasn't one of the 3-4 best defenses in college football. I think they're that good. I think there might be a little more feast or famine with them, just in terms of maybe bend up but don't break stuff. But last year, again, it kind of comes back to they were just so historically good last year. I think it went into week 9 or week 10 before the opposing team took a snap inside the 10-yard line, which is insane. So, I mean, I think they have a chance to kind of run it back and be elite again, despite what they lost there, because they have a lot of high-end talent still on that side of the ball.
Wonderful. Feeling great about Saturday. I'm going to move the conversation in a different way. I'm going to go both. I'm going to talk both teams. So I'm going to give you a chance to answer about Michigan too. But I want you to give me I'm going to give you a scenario. You give me the answer. Okay. Fresno State somehow pulls out the victory. Okay. Bulldogs win. Where did Fresno State take advantage of the Wolverines to get that win?
I think it's turnovers from the quarterback position. I think that, there's probably a scenario, there's a chance I think your squad can find a way to maybe get this Michigan team into a rock fight, because there is so much newness on the defensive side of the ball. I think it's there. I think it's popping. It's one of those things where maybe you pop a big play early on offense that goes for a touchdown. Quick turnover, all of a sudden you're in the red zone again. And before people have even gotten to their seats, Fresno State is up, 2 scores or whatever. I mean, that could be a pathway. Because I don't know if this team is built to come from behind. I mean, I don't even know who the team's quarterback is, so it's impossible for me to say that. So I think it's a quick start from you, from your squad. It's a slow start from Michigan, but over the course of 4 quarters, it's tough. I got to be honest. I think it takes a bit of an implosion from Michigan to get there. I think you could cover the spread without that, but I think defensively, especially, this isn't I don't think they're the Iowa Hawkeyes where the defense has to have a pick 6 and a scoop and score fumble to bail out the offense. I think they'll be able to put together something competent enough over there. And I guess it's just a matter of, if you can kind of jump on those mistakes.
Right. As what we typically see is the G4 hang for a quarter or 2, and then the differences really start to show third and especially fourth quarter.
Right.
Then I'm going to flip-flop it right now. Michigan wins. What did they do to take advantage of the Bulldogs?
I think it's, just taking care of business defensively. I think that not giving up big plays, not, getting off the field in those third down situations, when they do move the football, because every team does, 1 or 2 times during a game at the very least, forcing kicks instead of touchdowns. It's basic football stuff. And then I think just taking care of the football on offense. I think that They're going to be able to run the football. They're going to be able to put something together. But if your quarterback can, step in and make a throw on 3rd and 5, or, convert a quarterback run in a key situation, I think that that's where Michigan, pulls away in a game like this, would probably be the best way to put it. But again, it's, I think that's the scenario at play is really the question of the game is who can bring it for all 4 quarters. And because I think that this Michigan team has a bit of a chip on its shoulder, despite everything that's gone on. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I would almost say that all the off the field stuff probably helps contribute to that chip on the shoulder, because I mean, I don't know what the perception is there, but I don't know. It seems like most people are kind of dogging on Michigan a little bit. Probably that's maybe media people from Ohio, but I think that probably contributes to, like you're saying, a little bit of a chip, and still being feisty and feeling like people don't respect them or something like that. So, are you allowed to give a game day prediction in terms of score?
I'll give one. Okay, it might not be the same score as the one we post later this week, but I'll give a Monday, August 26th prediction.
Perfect. What do you got?
I'll say that Michigan wins 31-13. I'll give you all the cover. I think it's, last I checked, 21.5 or something like that. But I think it will be one of those things, like you just said, where Fresno hangs for a little bit, and then Michigan kind of throws that counter punch, maybe early 3rd quarter, halfway through the 3rd quarter, and starts to pull away. I think that it's a team that needs to get its sea legs under them, and I just do think that there is still that talent. There's that talent gap, even with all the newness, probably on both sides of the ball. So we'll say 31-13 Michigan.
Very fair and respectable. And just looking at last year's non-conference results, I mean, win against East Carolina 30-3, UNLV 35-7, Bowling Green 31-6. Rutgers 31-7. So I think probably in that ballpark makes a lot of sense for a final score for Michigan Wolverines.
And I'll say this too, like they play Texas next week. Like Colorado State isn't coming in or something like that. I think that what Michigan runs offensively, and maybe even what it allows its quarterbacks to do, I think it's going to be pretty vanilla, because they're going to catch Sark and company kind of sleeping next week. So I think that contributes to that pick for me as well.
I've listened to multiple college football shows, big ones on YouTube, and they talk about Michigan, Texas, and they don't even know that Fresno State is coming to the Big House on Saturday. So when that happens, I just kind of click it off, and that's probably when they start talking about Michigan, when I should listen to it. But
I get
it. So this is for our fans, for the Red Wave coming to the Big House. I don't know this, Anthony. Are you there? Are you in town?
I will be. Yes. Yep. I'm in town.
Where should folks from Fresno or from the Central Valley go? Like, you got a place to eat, a bar, a place to hang. With any recommendations for us?
Well, I'll throw a plug in there. We'll be doing our post-game shows from a place called Regents Field, which is in downtown Ann Arbor on Main Street, I believe it is. And I'll be there about an hour after the game doing our live post-game show. So feel free to come on there. Of course, you guys will be West Coast. You folks will be on West Coast time. So you're just going to be, game will be over probably around 8:30, in terms of your body clock. So you're going to be ready to keep getting after it. Come out and say hello. Would love to see you there. Have a couple other spots I'd like to go to. The Pretzel Bell's a nice spot. I'm blanking on the others, but those are the two. The one I'll be at and the one I like to go to as well. A lot of good spots around town. I'll be at a place called Regents Field. It's a sports bar in downtown Ann Arbor.
Perfect. Sounds like a good time. And, we are expecting a good contingent to be there Labor Day weekend. So a little bit extra time to travel. Caleb and I will both not be there, unfortunately. Small children for both of us. So not really in the traveling age right now. But, I know that it's, usually especially early in the season, our fans travel well, especially with a lot of hype. And I mean, a big opportunity here against the defending national champion.
It's always fun to see, especially that next tier of, the group of 4, group of 5 schools come out, because they typically do travel well. And again, I'm of course a little bit biased just because I've been on this beat and covering this team this is actually year 10 for me, but Ann Arbor's a great college town. It's one of the best. I think it's maybe top 2, top 3 in the Big Ten, right up there with Madison, right up there with Iowa City. So I think whoever comes out, you'll have a great time. Construction everywhere, though, but that's just a Michigan thing.
I was curious about this, and this is the last thing for me. Do you dislike the Spartans or the Buckeyes more? Who do you dislike the most?
That might be a question I opt out of. Let me just say this. Despite even things that have happened recently in the rivalry, a couple years ago, you had the stuff in the tunnel, and you had the kind of the pearl clutching with the sign stealing stuff last year. Michigan State fans, like, I walk out my front door and my neighbor could be a Michigan State fan. So my best friends are Michigan State fans. It's always, at least for me personally, once you get offline and touch grass, kind of fun, because it's it's family, it's neighbors, it's stuff like that. It's bragging rights. I do not have any Ohio State fans in my inner circle. And whenever I've gone to Columbus, I've been absolutely miserable before I've even touched the stadium. So there you go. I'll just put it that way.
Definitely enemy territory there. Oh man, that's good. Last thing for me, 'cause I don't know how much you've looked into our interim head coach, Coach Tim Skipper, but he had a stint at Central Michigan. I saw in your bio you are a CMU alum. So does that change your rooting interest at all? That maybe polling for someone who used to represent your Central Michigan? I don't even know their mascot.
Chippewas.
The Chippewas.
Right.
Let me be as politically correct as I possibly can. I am still paying the federal government for my Central Michigan education, and I'm not able to do that with a lack of success for the Michigan Wolverines. So I gotta, I hope for the best. I have a lot of respect for the program. And I'll just tell you this too. I mean, Michigan fans have had it pretty easy in the non-conference the last few years. I'm telling you, there are people, and I've said this too, like Fresno has had some really good teams come out of there, and it's not a layup at all. So, and assuming, it's only been a month or so since you guys made the change. Like, I don't think a lot's going to change there. I think that they're going to be ready to go, and every game this Michigan team plays is going to have a target on its back. So, yeah, I mean, I wish him the best long term, but I'm planning a wedding. I got a dog to put food in its bowl. Like, I'm not ready to do the let's lose in week 1 and hope that Texas doesn't kill them in week 2 type of thing.
Fair enough.
Well, Anthony, first, congratulations on the engagement. I didn't know that.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited.
You're going to have a blast. Both of us are married guys, and I think a sleepover with your best friend every night is something that you shouldn't pass up on. So have fun, my friend.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, fellas.
Oh, thanks for coming on. The first of many guest appearances, I'm sure, for you.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, not to toot my own horn, but this is like number 3 today, and it's again, I'm on the East Coast, fellas. This is the last one for me today. So, no, I appreciate it. Like I said, I'm looking forward to get to know your team this week, and also hope to see some of your fans out there Saturday night. I think it'll be a welcoming environment. I don't, unless you're in, well, then again, you are red. You do have the Ohio State color scheme to a certain extent. So I can't promise your full safety, but you've got a friend in me if you come on out Saturday night.
Perfect. Well, we appreciate your time, Anthony. Thank you very much.
Of course. No problem, fellas.